Alright, here is the setup for the lab for tomorrow, which would be the impulse momentum lab we showed you in class. There's a force detector, and it's hooked up to a beam clamped to the table. There's your cart, which is hooked in on a string and a rubber band, and down there is the motion sensor, which is ready to read. I've already got this to the point where we have it zeroed out. I had Jordan do that for me. Notice that the force is the only thing that's zeroed, so be careful when you go into zero that you don't do all channels. You just select the force sensor to zero because we do want it to still read distance. Now, the next thing to do is change some time settings, and to do that, I'm going to look at my sheet, and we'll get those set up and kind of show you how to do that. So, to change those time settings, you'll want to go to Setup, which is number 1. And we want to go to Mode, which is easy to hit an up arrow to get there. And now it says blah, 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 blah. We want to set up a time graph, so that's number 2. And we want to change time settings, which is also number 2. The time between samples in seconds we want to use as 0.02. The number of samples we'll use is 150. We'll hit enter. Select OK. You can see my experiment is now 3 seconds long instead of 5. And we'll hit OK again. And now we're ready to go. Now I'm going to hit start, and I'll have Jordan do his thing, making sure that there is some slack in the cord. We want to make sure to start this thing well slacked, because we want to give it a good chance to take off so it can pick up some speed. So it's slacked there, it's connected, everything's ready to go. As soon as I hit start, that's when Jordan will want to push it and send it, and I'll show you kind of what Jordan wants to do. Just get a practice in here, Jordan. Push it out, and that's just fine. And you want to make sure then that it doesn't get hooked up, and that was a good trial run. And then we're ready to go again for the next trial. So that's the basic idea. Start with slack, send it out, send it back in. Don't try to push it too hard because that's going to be a bad idea. So here we go. Motion detector, force sensor look like they're ready to rock. I'm going to go ahead and hit start, and as soon as he hears it beep, that's when he can send it. And you can catch it at the end if you want. That's fine. It doesn't really matter much. The big thing is that we're looking for an area where that pull happens. So we want to look at several graphs. One of the graphs is our distance graph. We're going to make sure we get a nice smooth distance graph. And there we see it. Absolutely. So there we see our distance graph. A nice smooth curve. The reason why it's going down instead of up is because our motion detector is getting approached, and so our distance should be decreasing while that happens. So that looks perfect. That's great. So I'm going to hit enter and go back to kind of that main screen. Now, we want to take a look at the force graph as well, just to see what it looks like. And there's the force graph, and you can see it's constant. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's a beautiful force graph. It's pretty constant at being right close to zero. Then it shoots way up as that pull happens. That's exactly what we want to do. Next, hit enter, take you back, and we want to go back to the main screen. We want to do an analyzation. We want to do some statistics. And we want to use the velocity graph. So I'm going to do number 3. We're going to use the velocity graph, and there you can see our nice velocity graph. And it says we want to select a portion of the graph from the left side of the approximately constant and negative velocity region, which for us is going to be down at the bottom. So I'm going to go down to the bottom, and you can see it takes me a little while to move over because I've got a lot of little points in there. And now I'm finally starting on the downward curve, and that's the bottom. So I'm at the bottom. That's my left side. I want my right side to be up at the top, because up at the top there, that should be my area that is basically at the point where the string has gone slack again. So here's my top. That's my right bound. It's analyzing that. And there it tells you what the minimum value is, the maximum value is, the average value is, and all that good stuff. And n is how many points there were, which is useful in figuring out how much total time that took. So there's our data for that particular part. Then you can hit enter, and we get the average velocity, we get all that stuff. Now we can do the same thing. We can do a stat, and number 4 here, but we'll do it for the force graph. And we'll do the same idea, this time selecting a graph that starts here and ends on this side to figure out, this side here to figure out where my average force is going to be, what my maximum and minimum values are, etc. So that becomes a really nice thing to look at. We ended up with a good graph here, and then there's a few things to just kind of take a look at, and yeah, that's the basic nuts and bolts of this particular lab. So it should be easy. There are 2 trials, which makes this a nice little quick one. Alright, if you have any questions, let me know. We'll see you tomorrow.